Hey everybody, in today's video I'm going to share with you the top 5 things that you should consider if you're an adult looking to get back into BMX and you're trying to decide what your next bike is going to be. For me, my next bike is going to be a Monza 24-inch. It's a classic cruiser style BMX, and I'm going to explain how these 5 considerations led me to decide that this was the best choice for me and why it might be the best choice for you too. But first, for a little bit of perspective, I wanted to share how revisiting some of my childhood memories has really rekindled my interest in BMX bikes. And that started a while back when my kids were much younger, and we made it a point to, as part of their education, to share with them some of the most iconic movies through the different decades. And collectively, we all really enjoy the 80s movies the most. And it's probably no coincidence that so many of those featured BMX bikes in them. And I'm thinking about some of the classics like E.T. and the getaway scene and the scene with Elliot and E.T. kind of floating across the moon. I'm thinking about the Goonies as they race off to adventure and they're going to look for One-Eyed Willie's rich stuff. I'm thinking about Mr. Miyagi fixing Daniel LaRusso's bike. He had that awesome mongoose bike in The Karate Kid. And then for me, one of my absolute favorite movies is Pee-wee's Big Adventure. And how could anyone forget his iconic bike? Such a great movie.
I meant to do that.
There's so many others, but the pinnacle for me is watching Crew Jones go from zero to hero when he wins the Hell Track race in the movie Rad.
He's so rad, yeah.
Watching those movies really got me thinking about the fun times that I had riding bikes as a kid. And my buddies and I, we all had BMX bikes and our lives were centered around them. They were our version of social media, how we connected with each other. And if you wanted to know where your friends were, you would just ride your bike up and down the street until you found a big pile of bikes outside of one of their houses. And we made jumps, we had neighborhood races, we went on adventures through the woods. As we got a little bit older, these were our tickets to freedom, and the only rule from our parents was you just had to get home when the street lights came on. As we got a little bit older, we were able to go across town and ride our bikes up to the dime store, and we'd pick up Garbage Pail Kids and different kinds of candy. And looking back, I just love how the social aspect of bikes kind of connected us all together. And I have just such great memories riding bikes as a kid. I'm hoping that these top 5 considerations will help people figure out what their next bike is going to be. But then for the enthusiasts who are already going balls out in the hobby,
go balls out.
Did I miss anything? If you have any other helpful ideas, please share in the comments below. We'll start with a quick summary, and then I'll go through each point in greater detail. And then I'll explain why I think that the Monza 24-inch bike had the best balance of all those considerations for me, and why it might be the same for you. The first thing you need to think about is your riding style. Are you looking to be a little bit more aggressive and do a bunch of tricks and take it off some sweet jumps?
You ever take it off any sweet jumps?
Or are you looking to go on more casual rides around the neighborhood with your friends and your family? There's really a bunch of different riding styles out there, and some bikes are more specialized for one aspect than the other. If you're looking to do just some more casual riding, the decisions are going to be pretty easy. But if you're looking to do a little bit more specialized, there's quite a few factors to think about. For modern BMX, riding styles fall into a few different categories. And for us older guys, we'll just start with the obvious one, and that's cruising around the neighborhood. This is really more casual riding. A little bit longer distances. You might pop a wheelie here and there, but you're really not doing any advanced tricks, and you're not taking it off of big sweet jumps most of the time. The next style of riding is going to be dirt trails and jumps, and that's going to be the closest to what we remember as kids back in the 70s and 80s. Dirt tracks, big berms, and big jumps. Most of us probably had an empty lot around the neighborhood somewhere where we made trails and jumps. And so this is going to be like that. But modern dirt jumping, they've really upped the game. It's next level. If you haven't checked out any dirt riding lately, I urge you to go check out some stuff on YouTube. It's really cool to watch. Definitely out of my league though. The next style is flatland freestyle, and freestyle bikes tend to be a bit smaller with shorter wheelbases, steeper forks, shorter cranks, and they're quite a bit smaller and more agile. And bikes that are designed for freestyle aren't necessarily going to be great for other riding styles. The next one is going to be skate park or park style riding, and these are bikes, you're riding in concrete bowls or wooden ramps with transitions, things that you would typically see in a modern skate park, and these bikes typically ditch the brakes to save weight. The next style is going to be BMX race, and modern race bikes are really designed for dirt track racing and going really fast. They're usually pretty lightweight. They have a huge front sprocket that gives them a lot of power to get up to speed quickly. They typically have a seat, but you don't see anyone use them, and they're really specialized for racing, and you don't see them used around, especially not in a casual environment. The last style I'm going to mention here is just plain old street riding. This is going to be a lot like the park riding, but it's going to be out in the wild. These bikes are a little bit beefier and they're meant to handle the stress from big drops down stair sets and jumps off of high obstacles and grinding on big ledges and stuff. So that's a lot to consider, especially if you're getting back into BMX and you're not sure what style of riding you want to do. For a lot of us older guys, it's pretty obvious. We just want to do some cruising. Maybe you do a little bit of tricks here and there, but for the most part, we want a pretty relaxed and laid back ride. Okay, for the second consideration, we're going to talk about bike size and frame geometry. And so now that you've thought about the type of riding that you want to do, some bike sizes and shape will be better suited than others. The most common BMX sizes are 20 inch, 24 inch, 26 inch, and 29 inch. You'll see other sizes like 22 and 27.5, but they're really not as common. And anyway, the size here indicates the size of the wheel that the frame accepts. And generally, the larger the wheel, the more stable and comfortable to ride, but it's going to be a little bit less nimble. And frame geometry also affects the size of the bike. So most often that's the length of the top tube, but other factors like how steep the handle or how steep the forks are and the length of the chainstays in the rear, they can all affect how responsive and agile the bike is as well. And if you're an adult just looking to casually ride around the neighborhood and that's it, then your choice is going to be pretty easy. Get a cruiser and consider a 24 inch, a 26 or a 29. And again, the larger the wheel size, the more stable and chill the ride's going to be. And 26 and 29 inches are the most popular in this category. But if you think you might want to be a little bit more aggressive and do some tricks every now and then think about a 24 inch, especially one with a little bit longer of a top tube, one in like the 22 inch range. And that'll give you a nice balance between comfort and still being agile and nimble. And then if you're an adult looking to get back into BMX racing, it really seems like the 24 inch BMX Cruiser is the sweet spot for those guys. And 20 inch and 26 inches are still good options, but it seems like the older guys gravitate towards the 24 inch race bikes. And if you're an adult looking to get into dirt trails and jumps, then it seems like for us older guys, the 22 inch size is really the most common. Some of them will ride 24, but they feel like that's just still a little bit too large and they still feel too cramped on the 20 inches, so that's something to consider there. And then if you're looking to get into street or park, it really is 20 inch. Not a lot of guys are doing serious tricks on anything bigger than a 20 inch, maybe a 22 inch. So yeah, 20 to 22 is the most common recommendation there. And then if you want to get into flatland freestyle, then 20 inch is really the best bet. Generally the flatlanders, at least the modern ones, like shorter top tubes, usually around 19 inches, maybe 19 and a half. Shorter chainstays in the back, shorter cranks. That size feels really cramped to me. The S&M that I built up feels really cramped. I know it's ideal for doing tricks, but outside of that, it's not a very comfortable bike to ride around in.
I don't even have any good skills.
So yeah, that's the most common style for modern freestylers. Next up, you'll need to consider the frame material and the quality of components that are in the bike. And as you start shopping around, you'll see a wide range in prices. And sometimes you'll pay a premium for a brand name, but it mostly comes down to the quality of the materials that are used. And you'll need to decide what level is right for your budget. And then frames, generally they come in a few different materials like high tensile steel, 4130 chromoly, aluminum, titanium, and even carbon fiber. High tensile steel bikes have been made for decades and they're really common, and that's because the material that they're made from is relatively inexpensive. These are the bikes that you're going to see in the department store or in the entry-level budget range of some of the bigger brands. And they're really just not as strong as the other materials. They're not going to take the stress of tricks and jumps, especially from some of us older and heavier riders. While the high tensile steel bikes, they may seem like a good budget-friendly option when you're first starting to do a little bit of homework, but they're not going to be as strong and they're not going to last as long. And so while you might be tempted to save a few bucks here, over the long run, I think if you get into the sport and you start having a lot of fun, I think you're going to wish you'd splurged for something a little bit nicer. 41 chromoly is the traditional gold standard for BMX bikes back in the day, and it's still common today. And it's a steel alloy that includes chromium and molybdenum, and it offers a better balance of strength, durability, and at a relatively low weight. And it provides a good combination of rigidity and impact resistance. And then we've got aluminum frames, and those are lightweight and really stiff, and that makes them great for racing as they're responsive and efficient at power transfer. but they do produce more vibrations than chromoly, which can lead to a less comfortable ride. Among the hardcore racers, there seems to be a debate whether you like aluminum, chromoly, or some of the other materials, but the older guys, they tend to like chromoly a little bit more because it's a little bit more flexible and easier on their aging joints. And then there are the really high-end frame materials, and those are going to be things like titanium or carbon fiber. They're also really stiff and lightweight. They're going to be great for racing, but they're super expensive, and they're really for the hardcore racers. And so for me, it's chromoly all the way, no question. And does it include entry-level OEM components, or does it come full of aftermarket high-quality parts, or is it a mix? When you're shopping around, you may see some bikes in the $400 range, and others closer to $1,500s or even more. And you may wonder, well, why would I buy a more expensive one when this $400 one looks really good? And it usually comes down to the material that the frame is made out of, and then the level of the components that are used. So yeah, the cheaper bikes are usually made from high tensile steel, which is not as durable. They're going to have lower quality components like single wall rims on the wheels. Those aren't going to be as durable if you're going to give it much abuse, especially for us older, heavier guys. It's going to have single piece cranks with loose caged bearings. It's going to have cheaper brakes. It might have a 1-inch threaded stem instead of a more modern 1 1/8 inch threadless stem. And these are great for entry level, but they're not going to be as durable, and they're not going to hold their value over time. On the other end of the spectrum, you'll tend to see full chromoly and aluminum frames, and they're going to have higher end components with double wall rims or mag wheels. They're going to have 3-piece cranks, 1 1/8 inch stem, sealed bearings everywhere, maybe aluminum or alloy stems, name brand tires, and so on. And then let's talk about craftsmanship. So there's no arguing that craftsmanship plays a role here, and how well the frames are made, how do the welds look, what's the quality of the paint and the chrome plating, how well does the manufacturer protect the bike during shipment, and so on. If you're looking for the very best quality, then there's no doubt that American-made frames that are welded by experts like Craig Turner are the cream of the crop. But in some cases, the frame, forks, and handlebars, just those parts alone, can cost more than a good quality bike from another brand. But man, those Craig Turner bikes are beautiful.
If you have the means, I highly recommend picking one up.
Okay, so the fourth consideration is going to be brand reputation and reviews. And so now you've homed in on the style and the size of the bike that you want, and you've thought about the materials and components and what quality is going to fit your budget. And it's time to consider some bikes from the different brands. There's a lot of great brands out there, and they all have their different pros and cons. And depending on what your combo is of the previous considerations, you might find a couple brands that stick out as having good models that are really going to meet your needs. And then next up, it's to start doing some research of the brand and seeking reviews and recommendations from more experienced riders. And most likely, someone's already asked some of your same questions on some of the forums like BMX Museum or some of the Facebook groups. And then obviously you can get a lot of good insights from YouTube videos as well. For me, I've really enjoyed over the last couple of years Sean over at Rad BMX Builds and Kev and Bernie over at Cruising in the 808. I've learned a lot from those guys and kind of learned through their trials and errors, so I would recommend you check those out too. In addition to getting impressions from experienced riders about specific bikes, it's good to read up on people's experiences interacting with the companies too, especially if they've needed support. For example, in my case, I've sent questions to a couple of the bigger brands over the last couple of years, and a couple times they didn't even acknowledge me.
Not cool, Robert Frost!
And then it's always a good idea to go find the social media accounts of some of the companies that you're interested in and go kind of scroll through a little bit of their history and just see what they've been up to. Are they promoting a vibe and lifestyle that aligns with your own values? I know for me, when possible, I like supporting brands that seem to really get me and have good ethics. And then for me, what really sets some companies apart at the next level is how engaged they are in the community. Are they there just promoting their next marketing campaign or the next marketing spiel? Or are they out there supportive of the community, sponsoring events, creating content that's inspirational and educational? Are they actually engaging with people who leave comments on their posts? Are they proactively engaging with people out following hashtags? Or are they just there superficially looking to make a quick buck? For me, I really love companies that are of the community and not just in the community, that they're grassroots. To me, that is really important. And then for us older guys getting back into the sport, it's interesting to know that many of the biggest and most famous brands from the 80s have been bought and sold multiple times, and some of them are owned by big corporate conglomerates these days. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, but it is interesting to consider that for those companies, they answer to the shareholders, and the shareholders are interested in profit. They're not necessarily interested in the community. And so sometimes that really influences the decisions that these bigger brands have in the market. I love following some of the smaller brands like S&M, Gary and Craig Turner, Monza Bicycle Club. Some of these privately owned companies, they can do whatever they want, whenever they want. They're not answering to shareholders, and the end result of their product and its quality usually shows it. And I kind of compare that to the experience you get when you're having a local high quality craft microbrewery beer versus some big global brand that you can get in any grocery store. And it's not always about that David and Goliath type of battle for me, but when everything else is the same and there's a tiebreaker, I'm always gonna root for the scrappy small guy who's in it to win it. All right, so number 5 is value and warranty. And this one is a little bit more subjective depending on what your budget and comfort levels are, but it effectively wraps all the other considerations together. Does the bike that you're looking at represent a good value for your money? Does it balance quality and cost effectiveness to meet your budget? And does it come with a solid warranty to ensure you're covered if any issues arise? Okay, so that sums up the top 5 considerations that I think you ought to think about when you're considering what your next bike is going to be. If I missed anything or if you have any other ideas, please drop them in the comment section below. But next, let's move on to what I decided what my next bike is going to be. As I mentioned earlier, I decided to go with a 24-inch Monza BMX. It's got Skyway Tuff mags, a beautiful chrome finish, and really old school vibe with the knobby tires. And here's why. For the style of riding I want to do on my next bike, I'm looking for something that's a bit more adventurous than just cruising around the neighborhood on a 26, but maybe something that's not quite as extreme as what's typically done on a 20-inch. And I want to do a little bit of jumping. I want to cruise around the pump track and get my adrenaline up. I want to run it through some single track out in the woods. And then I'm also looking for something that handles a little bit more like an 80s BMX, but with updated technology. Something that has that really classic look. And this Monza 24-inch fits that ticket perfectly. With respect to materials and craftsmanship, the Monza ticks all the check boxes here too. The frame and forks are made from 4130 chromoly. They're manufactured by the legendary Japanese company Tange. They're maybe not the same quality of a custom weld job by somebody like Gary or Craig Turner, but Tange has an outstanding reputation for quality manufacturing. And in this case, we've got a really good balance between price, materials, and craftsmanship. The Monza bikes come with a bunch of high quality components too. This 24-inch comes with some really awesome looking Skyway mag wheels. Those are super sick and they really take me back to the nostalgic vibes of the 80s. And those mags alone would cost you $200 if you were to buy them from a bike shop. It also comes with Kenda Comp 3 tires, which have a great reputation for being a good balance between value and price. It comes with Diacomp brakes and levers, and the rear brake is a V brake for additional stopping power. And Diacomp is another one of these legendary Japanese companies that's still making awesome quality products today. It comes with bear trap pedals, a Tange seat post clamp. Tange and Monza did a collaboration together for some custom handlebar grips. It's got 3-piece cranks, it's got a threadless stem, a bunch of other high quality parts, and then not to mention the beautiful chrome finish, and it even includes an old school BMX pad set. With respect to brand reputation and reviews, this is one of the areas where I think Monza really stands out. They were created a while back by a couple of guys who were into BMX bikes when they were kids. And as adults, they were looking back on those childhood memories and they wanted to recreate those bikes with modern technology, but still retain some of that old school feel and handling that they remembered from back in the day. And their motto is, "Your BMX all grown up." And I love that so much. I've seen bike build videos on YouTube, read conversations on Facebook groups and some social media posts. And while no manufacturer is ever perfect, the feedback on these bikes is overwhelmingly positive. And I saw story after story of people really connecting with their childhood and really just having a lot of fun with these Monza bikes. And I haven't really seen any gripes or big issues. The couple of minor ones that I saw, Monza took care of those folks super quickly and they were really happy. They also have a 30-day money-back guarantee with free shipping, and that's unheard of in the industry. and then combine that with a 2-year warranty on the frame and fork set, and the risk here is super low. Monza's earned themselves a passionate following of enthusiasts. There's a Facebook group with Monza owners that has got a couple of thousand members where they're sharing their experiences, they're giving each other tips on upgrades, they're telling stories about cool things that they've been doing on their bikes, and unlike many of the other BMX communities online out there, it's really pretty low-key, full of positive vibes. You don't really see much of the trolling and the holier than thou stuff that's common on some of the other communities. And when they say Monza Bicycle Club, they're not exaggerating. I really love that. I love that while Monza doesn't have the giant marketing budgets that some of the big bike companies do, that they're totally down to support the community. I've seen them do some giveaways on their social media platforms. I know they're sponsoring BMX shows. I think they're sponsoring the upcoming Texas BMX Roundup show in June, and they're known to occasionally support the little guys too. For me, when I consider how the Monza bikes weigh in with respect to the 5 factors that we talked about before, they really stand out to me as a great value for the money. I'm convinced that this Monza 24-inch is going to be the best choice for my next bike, and if you're anything like me, I'd strongly urge you to consider this as the best choice for you too. So back to Monza being down to support the community, I actually reached out to them a couple of weeks ago to see if they'd be interested in partnering with me on making a couple of videos, with one of them being picking the best bike for an adult getting back into BMX, which is this video, and then the next video I wanted to do would be an unboxing, an assembly, and then giving a review of how it all looks and just overall quality. And then the third video would be me taking it up to that pump track for the first time, and I still haven't ridden on the pump track yet. And so I'd make a couple of videos about what it's like to go to the pump track the first time. I've got a friend who's been riding up there the last year or so, and so getting some pointers from him and kind of sharing how it goes, what works and what didn't work, and then maybe a couple of videos following up with that once I get a little bit more competent. And so I thought it'd be fun to share that progress with kind of upping my game with the 24-inch BMX bike, and I'm really excited to partner with Monza on this. I was stoked that I received a quick personal acknowledgement within a few minutes of sending the email, and they said they'd be getting back to me within the next day, and then I was even more stoked when they replied and said, yeah, that sounded interesting, they'd love to partner with me on this. So here we are. I couldn't be more excited to say that the Monza has shipped the bike, and it should be here any day now. Big shout out to Monza for being willing to partner with us on this video and graciously providing the bike for us. I can't wait till it gets here, and the next video we'll do the unboxing and assembly, and we'll give it a rundown and an initial review, and then we'll get the bike over to the pump track. I can't wait to share these experiences with you. So thanks again for watching, and we'll see you in the next episode.